Comrades, as you may have noticed from a post on antiimperialism.com, a new cancer medication called Vaxar came out in India, and it's caused a huge uproar because the CEO of Bayer, the company that actually produces it, came out and said, this medication is not for Indians. It is for people who can afford it. Now this is important because it comes on the heels of an Indian ruling that says a medication can be made and distributed at 97% of the brand name price to the public. Obviously, this is a very horrible, evil thing to say, that this medication is not for you, the people in which the society it was actually produced. This is meant for richer overseas clients, generally understood as white people. But what's really interesting, it actually makes this worse, and it's actually very indicative of the ideology that we live in, not just here in India, because capitalism is capitalism. It's its own force, regardless of what country it is. It may have some different characteristics, but overall, capitalism is capitalism. It is the base that produces the superstructure. Now, what I mean by that is, take a look at what the media said, the capitalist media, in defense of what it was the CEO said. Of course, we want to make sure people have access to life-saving drugs, yet widespread violations of intellectual property rights erases the incentive to invest incredible resources into developing these drugs in the first place. Eventually, everyone will benefit from adhering to the exclusive rights of intellectual property. This does adequately say something about the ideology of capitalism, and on another level, it also exposes one of the contradictions in this system as well. In order to produce life-saving drugs, we need to restrict access via pricing measures, dooming many to unnecessary suffering and death so that we can make a profit and do it again. Basically, our mode of production, capitalism, needs you to die in order for us to make more money and perpetuate that system. Of course, this all lies on the premise that it has to be produced this way, and that capitalism is the only mode of production that can be used to develop these vaccines. I could very easily point to Cuba and all the cancer vaccines it's actually recently come out with. But it's important to note that socialism is not a mode of production itself, but the transitionary period between capitalism and communism. Only communism itself is a mode of production, not socialism. But it shows that even in the transitory period, a much better use of resources and access to those medications and the desire by people to want to create them still actually exists. Now we can even go on and just look at a little bit more of the influence imperialism has on this. Economically speaking, patents and intellectual property is a type of monopoly capital. When joined with other forms of finance capital, i.e. insurance companies, which typically pay the bulk of expensive treatments for those privileged enough to be covered, such monopoly capital allows for the circulation and concentration of capital in the core at the expense of the periphery. Hence, not only do intellectual property rights necessarily restrict access to life-saving medicine for those who cannot afford it, they are part of a system which creates the very conditions whereby the world's masses are typically poor in the first place. What is essentially being said is that the very manyness of capitalism itself, the market, is what's literally keeping people from being able to have these medications. This is a problem of capitalism itself. Have they not just basically said outright that people have to die in order for these medications to be able to exist and get to people? And because capitalism is a system of inequality, especially on a global scale, guess which people aren't going to get the medication? The lower class of people, because they can't afford it. This is the very face of capitalism itself, and no arguing by people who support capitalism can actually alter this fact that this is exactly what is happening. This is the real face of the system itself, and no amount of social democratic posturing, putting a human face on capitalism, can change that. This is again another reason why this rotten, political economic system has to go. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.